Let's do mosaic crochet in the round as a tube. Tube is handy for making a bag, for making a pillow, and it's those joins that we are really excited about because we don't have to cut our yarn at the end and we can just carry it up on the inside. Using tumbling curls, working in the round, we will start with either a chain of 50 or a foundation single crochet of 50. The pattern says that if you're going to be working flat, you have to add multiples of 50 plus 2. And that plus 2 is for the joining stitch and the end stitch. We are skipping those. And if you're skipping the joining stitch and the end stitch, it doesn't matter if you do a foundation single crochet or a chaining, you're just going to be doing multiples of 50, depending on how big you want your bag to be. And the reason that we are skipping the extra chain as well is because that extra chain, if you were chaining, it says plus 3. We don't need to turn our work. So we're skipping the joining stitch and the end stitch, and we are skipping the turning chain. So whether you do chains or a foundation single crochet, you only need to do your multiples of 50. So here's my 50 chains. It's 12 inches long. The stretch of your final piece will be slightly different than an initial chain. It's not truly a gauge swatch, but it gives you a good idea of how big your project is going to be. And because I just want to do a small bag, I'm not going to do repeats. I don't want a bag this big. I only want a bag this big. It's going to fit my phone. So we can just join it, and you're going to want to make sure that you're not twisting it. So you follow it along, make sure it's not twisted. And we're going to go joining in that first chain. You only need to pick up one loop. When there are 3 loops in the chain spot, if you pick up 2 loops, you still have 1 loop that's not joined, so really the yarn doesn't care which direction you're joining it. So you just grab 1 loop. And you have to remember that this stitch that you finished here with and the stitch that you just joined into, you need to put a stitch in both of those. Neither of them can disappear. So don't pull too tightly with your join. Every other row you will pull tightly for your join, but on the beginning one, don't. Now because we did chaining and not the foundation single crochet, we now have to put, using our main color, a single crochet in every stitch. If you did the foundation single crochet technique, you would be done that step. So we're going to make sure that we go into that same stitch that we just joined into. And I didn't chain anything extra, I'm just doing the single crochet right there. You can put a stitch marker if you're not sure where your end is going to be. That would be the time to do it. And you can just use 1 loop on every chain. I prefer usually using the back loop, but when it comes to a bag, that bottom edge is not actually going to be seen. We're going to join it together. The bottom edge is going to get sealed, so it doesn't matter. Usually using the bottom, this back bump is usually what I use, because then at the bottom you'll see the V. But that's only on like a flat piece, a blanket or a cowl or a scarf. I've put 1 single crochet all the way around. This was my first single crochet, and this stitch here where I joined is my last one. I have to put a single crochet in there as well. If you aren't entirely sure, you should count, because your stitch count needs to be the same as your foundation row. I needed 50 stitches in every repeat, and I'm doing a single repeat. So I have 50 stitches around. If you're using a different pattern, clearly your stitch count will be different, but you need to make the stitch count the same as the repeat. To join, now that I have finished this stitch, I need to join it to this stitch, otherwise you'll have a bit of a V, a gap here. And we're going to use the back loop, but we're going to grab the other color. And we're not going to cut our yarn because we're working in the round, and that's our favorite thing about working in the round. We're going to do a slip stitch right through. And now that we have gold, our first foundation row with the gold is all single crochets in the back loop all the way around. And our first stitch is the one that we just joined into. We have to remember that it's not just a joining space, it is the first stitch of the round. So I'm holding the tail because we don't want the tail to just fall apart. At the end, we can weave them in, or you could leave them loose in your bag, I suppose. I do weave in my ends. I'm a weaver. we're going to go right into this same back loop and we're going to do a single crochet. This part here, this is where you'll want to pull it tight, and that'll keep the colors from showing and peeking through. And we're going to go all the way across and we're going to do our foundation row number 2, which in this particular pattern that I'm working with, the teal round is counted as round 0 and the gold is counted as round 1. Different patterns, different designers, they'll have a different way of doing it. Even amongst my own patterns, sometimes I have different ways, like the magazine requires that I do it this way, or it was a group effort and they required I do it this way, or I was trying this and trying that. The pattern has to tell you what is happening. It doesn't matter what you're used to. The pattern has to be clear. That is the real rule. So around we go. I've gone all the way around because this row did have a joining stitch. This right here is the joining stitch. So that first round, we needed to make sure we do everything. This one, we want to make sure we're not doing another stitch into the join, because then you'd have too many stitches. So when your yarn is pulled tight, because every other row it will be, just at the beginning here our tails are loose so they're not pulled tight, then it would be almost invisible, and then you would remember that you're not supposed to use the joining. So this little blue that I tightened up, that is our joining slip stitch, doesn't count as anything. This is our first stitch of the round, and that is where we are going to join. Again, using the back loop, and we're going to grab our other yarn now. Now you can figure out what your preferred method is. Do you want to put the yarn this direction and pick up from this direction? And then next time you put the yarn this direction and pick up from this direction, and you get a bit of a twist going on along the back? Or do you want to twist it the other way? Whichever way you decide, just keep doing that and it'll look nice on the back, okay? Not that it needs to look nice, it's a bag, it'll be hidden, but I like it looking nice. So you pick up and you slip it right through, and this is the one that you're going to pull a little bit tight, and we're ready to go. The first stitch is the one that we just used. If we were dropping it down, this loop down here would be the first stitch we use. So now is when you have to read your pattern. You may not be using the Tumbling Curls pattern like I am. If you're using a different pattern, this part will be different, but the way we join, I want to show you when it's a double crochet and a single crochet, that sort of thing. We'll go over the couple options. This is just the sample that I'm using. So mine starts with a double crochet, which means I'm yarning over, I'm not using this stitch, and I'm going to grab it from down here, and we pull it up. And this stitch that we joined into, that one doesn't get used again. That's the one that we would have just used for the single crochet, so that's the one we skip when we do the double crochet. Now we have to finish going all the way around whatever your pattern tells you to do, and then I will show you the join again because we want to see a few options of how we do those joins. Now that I have nearly finished round 2, this teal was 0, the gold was 1, and then I'm on round 2, my final stitch is a single crochet. So you can see here, this was the double crochet, it's being used, it's being skipped. So this is the single crochet. There's a teeny tiny bit of yellow there. If you have pulled this tail tightly, you really won't see it. If your tail is loose, you might think that there's an extra stitch there and you might try to use it. So make sure that the tail is tight so that you know that the join is not to be used. And we are going to finish the round, single crochet in the back loop, and then we are going to grab our other yarn when it comes to joining in the first stitch that we made using the back loop. We're going to make sure that it is still tight. This blue one, once we go through it, the blue one also needs to be pulled a bit tight. If the blue one doesn't get tightened at this point, when you go to do your next stitch, it's going to be kind of in the way. So you want it to have enough room above the tightened stitch. So obviously loosen it if you can't get your yarn through. But leave enough room here to do a stitch, but tighten the blue one so that it's not in the way. That is the tip. Our next stitch on, for me, it's round 3, using my gold, my contrasting color, it's a single crochet. So I'm going in the back loop above our first stitch that we made, which is the same one that we just joined into. Pull up the loop. This is where the teal will get in the way if it's a giant loop in there. So if you find it in the way, just tighten your tail and do the single crochet. And my next stitches are all single crochets as well. So you're going to finish your round. I'm just about to finish round 3. I have one more single crochet to make. So you can see the teeny tiny blue, that's the join, that's this one we're ignoring. But this stitch here, we do need to finish. So it's, for me, it's a single crochet. And then the joining spot will be the first single crochet in the back loop. Grab our other color, make sure it's being pulled tight, up, slip stitch, then pull the gold one tight as well. So that is what the join looks like. My first stitch in round 4, using the main color for me, teal, is a double crochet. So I'm going to not use this that we just joined into, dropping it down to the double crochet below. The next stitch that we are using, because you're used to skipping stitches at the back, remember that the one that you're skipping is the one you joined into. So this is the next stitch. You might get things twisted if you're not entirely sure. That's why I like to point it out. So that is how those joins work, where you're just changing colors as you join. It is pretty smooth. You'll really see it when you have single crochet going into single crochet or double crochet going into double crochet. The join becomes more noticeable because this little space here has your stitch plus the join. It is very minutely larger than these other spots, which is why you want to make the joins tight, but it is a nice neat join that is almost invisible. So I had 12 inches, and when I folded it in half, now it's 6.5, which means that it has stretched a bit. The chain was 12, but once I put stitches in it, it stretched a bit. I am at the final round, row 32, and because I won't need to pick up my other color to do any more rounds, in this instant I can use the same color for joining. If you would like an even nicer looking join, let's take that apart. You can cut your yarn here right now, and you use a little needle instead of putting it through. So you just pull it through like this, and now to join it, you go find both loops. We were using the back loop for joins, but for the final join, you can find both loops. You go underneath them, and you're going to go down this stitch, because then it looks like, you have to tighten it so that it looks basically like the same as all the other stitches. So as long as you can get the right tension, this end you will then weave in back and forth, whatever you do. I always stick blue into blue so that the colors are still not visible. And you want to go a couple directions. You want to go through the fibers of the stitch, not just through the holes like that are being made by the stitch. And that's maybe not a long enough tail, I don't know. I usually try not to waste yarn, but then I don't want to pull it too tight. There we go. Now I'll go back the other way. This needle is not my favorite needle. I have a better one. This one, the end is a little bit too blunt for my liking, and it gets stuck sometimes on the actual yarn. A little bit annoying, but it works. Give it a tug. Looks nice. So we'll cut that teeny tiny little bit off. And of course, this color, you're going to have to do the same. Now, if you did not want to do all 32 rows in this pattern and you were doing a single repeat like me, that would probably be better. I realized once I got to the end that my bag is quite tall, and typically that's not my favorite thing. Although maybe some people like a tall bag. Maybe this will be your new favorite design. I don't know. If I was not just making the video for the joins, and if I had been thinking about what I was doing a little bit better, I would have stopped a little bit sooner, because you can just stop crocheting, just finish it at any row, and then my bag wouldn't be quite so tall. My phone is only this big, so if I put this in the bag, there'd be this much gap at the top, and it might stretch a little bit from the weight, so I would have probably stopped 2 or 4 rows sooner. Not really that dramatic. And that is the tube. Now, if you pay close attention, you can tell that this was our joining spot. So there is the front and the back of my bag. Technically, this is the bottom because I had that foundation. It's a bit thicker than the top. These tails inside, you can tell where the join has been, but it's still very neat and tidy. And it would be at the side of your bag anyways, so inside you wouldn't really notice. Obviously I have to weave in these tails at the bottom, and we are also going to join the bottom. I'm just going to whip stitch mine. Get a needle and thread, and I could have left this tail longer, then I wouldn't have to have another knot to join in, but hindsight, you know. You can benefit from my mistake because you can do that. But make sure that your join is on the side so that it's basically hiding up the part that you don't really look at. And these tails we should weave in, but we'll just hide them for now. And I'm just going to go under 2 loops on this side and 2 loops on that side. And I'm just going to go 2 loops, 2 loops all the way. I'm going to keep that whip stitch along the bottom. Now that we have our bag, it's a tube that's been joined, the bottom is joined together. My next thing is a handle. I love to do a Tunisian simple stitch handle. I'm going to go on the side here. This is the middle one, so I'm going to go 2 stitches this way. I'm going under both loops. I'm going to pick it up, leave this tail long enough that it doesn't come apart, and you'll weave it in. You could have not cut your yarn here and just carried it over there. I wasn't thinking ahead, of course, right? So I'm going to pick up all 5 stitches. This one's a bit tight because that's where I joined things. Okay, 4 and 5. So that's the width that I would like. And then if you're familiar with Tunisian crochet, the first one that you go through, you're just going to pull through 1. That's the border stitch, the edge stitch. And now every other time you're going to pull through 2. And at the beginning here, you remember this is loose, so that's not good tension because it's just hanging out. And now you can see this sticks, that this is the stitch here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This one counts as your first stitch here, it's lined up. So the next one is here. Simple stitch just goes under the front bar like this, and you're picking up the stitches so that you have 5 on your hook again. The edge stitch, instead of just picking up the front bar, we're also going to pick up the back bar because it'll give it a nicer finish on the side. So we go through 1 on the edge, and then we go 2, 2, 2, and 2. And this is, you can do however many rows you want to get to the other side. This creates a fabric that is not super holey, it's not stretchy. There's not a lot of give in it, which is what I like for the handles. So we go through 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, picking up the front. There are other stitches that you can use in Tunisian crochet. You could make a fancy design, whatever you like. But this is my easy peasy handle maker. This is what I like to do on most of my bags. Popcorn didn't want to move, so he's going to help us join the bag. So I have made my handle, and I definitely do not want it to be twisted when I stick it together. So I'm going to make sure that we are all facing the right direction. This is the way we want it to join. It's quite long because I wanted it to be a crossbody bag. And to join, I've picked up my stitches. I've got my 5 live loops on here. And then I'm just going to fold the bag in half. And I'm going to find that halfway point over here. That's where I'm going to join them. The yarn tail, I need it to be quite long because not only do I want to join each stitch, but afterwards I'm going to want to sew in the end. So I'm going to make it probably, let's see, how many inches is that? Maybe 8 to 10 inches. And what I'm going to do is, you can count if you want it to be more specific. I just fold it in half and guess. if this is my middle, so then I go back 2, this will be the spot that I want to join to. And I'm going to pull it through that spot, plus the edge is usually 1 stitch. So we're done that. Then I go into the next one. And I pull it through that spot plus 2 stitches. Then I go into the next one, pull it through that spot plus 2 stitches. Then I go into the next stitch, pull it through the spot plus 2 stitches. This one, pull it through that spot and 2 stitches. So I still have 1 loop here. So when I pull this through, if you don't weave in your end, that'll come apart. But I am going to definitely weave it. I'm just going to go like a whip stitch just to secure it for sure. All 5 stitches. Make sure that it's tight enough. And then I'm going to stick my yarn to the back of my project, or the inside of the bag essentially. So this side looks nice, and now I need to weave in the ends. And I prefer to weave it through this area here, because then it doesn't affect the stretch of my bag. But this does not have that much stretch. This has a lot more. So that is why I use that Tunisian simple stitch for my straps, because it's not super stretchy. It's still crochet. It doesn't have no stretch, but it's one of the better strap options in my opinion. And then I'm just going to weave it all in here, back and forth, through the stitches, through the fibers, until we use up all the yarn. There it is. And that is the end of the tutorial. Now you know how to do mosaic crochet in the round. You don't have to cut your yarn. You don't have to do those joining stitches and end stitches. And you can make a bag, a purse, a pillow. I don't know what you're going to make.